Hi guys, this is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, ending eating disorders using nothing but our brains. And so fun to see you guys today. So welcome, welcome. So fun to see you guys here for another live feed. And feel free to just like pop in with, questions or comments, or if you've had, experiences that you want to share, this is something where we really have an amazing community. And thank you guys for making it that way because it's made up of you. And so welcome again. My name is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and we are going to talk about a topic today that just really needs to be talked about. So, a lot of times people connect eating disorders and having trouble with eating, or having compulsive eating or emotional eating or whatever it is, with some sort of trauma, right? Some sort of like, oh well, they probably do that behavior, they probably have an eating disorder because of something awful that's happened to them, like they want control over their life because they feel like they don't have control anywhere else. And honestly, these are myths that we have to talk about and get out of the way, because it creates this horrible stigma that actually keeps people in this cycle and creates a society where that really pushes any sort of habit that we have with food that we want to fix into a place of shame and hiding. And we talk to so many women who they have never told anyone about their struggles with food, because there's so much shame not only surrounding what's happening with food, but surrounding all of these false ideas of why people have eating disorders, of why this is happening to them, of why they have this compulsion. And so we're going to talk about that today. Now, with the hashtag Me Too movement that's really happened, it's really brought a lot of things to light. A lot of people who didn't realize that it was so common for people to be assaulted, for people to be raped. It's always been an extremely common thing. But for those who are in a place where, because of privilege or because of their situation, they just weren't as akin to it, that's really important for that to be out, right? And when we can talk about things, then the shame in them can start to melt away, and it can start to just be more, not accepted like it's acceptable, but accepted like, yes, that really is a thing that happens, and you're not alone and you're not the only one. Thus, Me Too, right? And I mean, sometimes it's just hard to be a woman. I mean, 1 in 5 women get raped, and those are the stats that are reported. And so many people don't report what's happening. And I mean, a lot of times, being a woman, you spend so much of your time just having to think about this problem of, how am I going to protect myself? How am I going to stay safe? Because it's not a safe world for a woman. And I mean, for any of us who know a lot of women in our lives and have close relationships with them, you'd probably see that 1 in 5 is a much higher stat than that when you take into account all of the assault that isn't reported. And sometimes it feels like, really, no matter who you are or what you've done in your life, that part of your life is just spent trying not to get raped. That is just always a possibility, and it's such an incredibly common thing. Anytime that we get in an Uber or a Lyft or go on a date or go to a party or spend time with a husband, then we can be assaulted, we can be raped, and it's a common thing. And it's no fault of the victim, it's no fault of our own, just because we live in a world that accepts men raping and that support and supporting them in it. Essentially, that's one huge issue and problem in our society. And I've had so many friends who have been raped and not reported it. And why? Because a lot of times it's actually worse for the victim to report a rape or an assault than for them just to not do it. Like, just the act of it happening is not as bad as the act of it happening and then reporting it. I have a friend who, is assaulted by her professor. It took over her life, in all of her time, and just, the hoops that she had to jump through to report it, and all the accusations and the things that people said, of blaming her for what was happening. To have to explain herself over and over again, defend herself that she didn't contribute to someone else hurting her. And in the end, there was absolutely no justice. It was worse for her in trying to seek justice for how she had been hurt. I have friends who have been assaulted by Lyft or Uber drivers, and they feel in danger reporting it because that person knows where they live. I've had friends who have been raped by their husbands, and they don't report it because it's worse for them if they make him mad. So it's often worse for a woman who is raped and hurt to try to seek after justice, because we live in a society that essentially, supports rapists, and that's an awful thing. But what we're going to talk about today is how these things are connected with eating disorders, really the society that we live in that, is victim blaming and, supporting of those who are assaulting and raping, and then how that connects in with these stigmas and ideas around eating disorders. Because a lot of times this is how it happens. Horrible things happen all the time, and very much to women. And so something horrible happens in your life, we're abused, raped, manipulated, assaulted, and life goes on, and some of us develop eating disorders, and then we go to therapy or we go to groups for help because we want to fix our problem with food. We want to fix our problem with eating. And then we're told, of course you have an eating disorder. Of course you're depressed. Of course you're anxious. Of course you have an eating disorder. All these horrible things happen to you. You know that thing that somebody else did to you that hurt you? You have an eating disorder. You have the struggle because of what someone else did to you and made that choice, and now you have to live the rest of your life with an eating disorder. That's the sort of false message that we get when we try to seek for help. And then we're told, well, you better sort through all of that so that you can be free from your eating disorder. That's the same thing as saying, hey, this thing that somebody else did to you, this way that someone else did this and made this choice to hurt you, you have to have the burden of sorting that out. The victim has to sort that out and all of the damage that's done, or you can't have freedom with food. You can't eat normally unless you sort out what somebody else did to you. So now the burden is on the victim to forgive the person that raped her, or just relive the details over and over about being hurt if you ever want to eat normally again. Are you seeing the flaw in this logic? Are you seeing how this is even worse for the victim to be told that they have to do this? They have to do this really difficult thing that has nothing to do with food in order to ever be normal with food. And that's a thing that people are hearing from experts. This is insult to injury. You know what's really awful is, in search of having a normal relationship with food, in search of getting rid of your compulsive eating, in search of getting your life back from food thoughts all day and wondering if you're going to binge that day, being willing, because you're so dedicated to that, to do what it takes to fix this. And so somebody tells you, oh, well, you have to forgive your rapist. Okay, I'll forgive my rapist. Okay, I'll spend hours, crying in therapy, rehashing these details, really having this disrupt my life because I've got to sort through this to be able to end my eating disorder. And then going through all of that and still having an eating disorder because it was never caused by what somebody else did to you. It was never caused by this trauma. Now, our compulsions with food can be started with some trauma, right? We may turn to food out of comfort or for a sense of protection, but we are not comforting ourselves with the donuts of today for something that happened 20 years ago, or the 42 almonds and another yogurt and another yogurt and another yogurt of today has nothing to do with the hard thing that happened a decade ago. It may have started with that first initial turning to food for comfort, because food is a comfort. Food changes us chemically. Food is something that is so much more than food. But when we get into a cycle of that, 20 years later, it's not that we're trying to keep ourselves safe from some way we were victimized a lifetime ago because of the way that we're eating today. What is happening is it is a habit now. And we're doing this compulsive behavior with food simply because we have the habit to do it, simply because we have told our brains and created these neurological pathways of this is what we do. This is how we eat. This is what we put value on and have these compulsions around. We've just done it enough times that our brain is like, okay, this is our habit. So with somebody who has been through, these awful things, rape and trauma and all of that, being able to feel how you want. You can sort through your trauma. You can forgive those who have hurt you, or you can just stay angry if you choose to, or you can just move on to with your life if you don't want to keep on rehashing and working through those things. Because here's the truth. With our clients who come to us, the hundreds and hundreds of people that we have freed from their eating disorders, women and men, but especially, this is a big issue for women with this connection and this stigma. So many of our clients have come to us. For instance, we have a woman who came to us after a decade of bulimia. She is now completely free. She doesn't have an eating disorder anymore after working with us. And horrible things happened to her. Horrible, horrible things happened to her in her life. She was hurt, just awful things. And what she said at the end of our program is she said, I'm so thankful to know that I wasn't broken because of what someone else did to me. I'm so grateful to know that my past didn't have to determine my future. That because somebody hurt her a long time ago doesn't mean that, of course, she has an eating disorder. Of course, you've got to be in this horrible cycle for the rest of your life. Oh, remember that horrible thing that happened to you? Well, of course, you're going to struggle with food for the rest of your life. She doesn't struggle with food anymore, you guys. And it has nothing to do with sorting out her trauma. And she gets to know that now of, wow, I was never broken. And that doesn't have to be something that limits me. I can just fix my relationship with food directly, because that's what she was looking for in the first place when she went on this journey of everyone telling her, oh, well, you've got to fix this other thing that's not food in order to have this thing with food fixed. It's just false. We have another amazing woman who came through our program who just was horribly, horribly abused by her father when she was young. And of course, the experts had told her, like, oh, well, of course you're turning to food this way because of what this other person did to you, which is just false. And she came to us after 16 years of bulimia, and she's now completely free and done in like a handful of weeks. And she doesn't have those compulsions anymore. And we never once asked about her trauma. We never asked about her past because it doesn't matter. Now we have a really beautiful community where people feel safe to share and people are very open and there's no judgment, and it's a really beautiful thing. So it was actually after she graduated that she shared with us, like, hey, and by the way, I, lived through this horrible, horrible trauma, and, I've sorted through so much here. It never ended my eating disorder. But just so you know where I've come from, I just want you to know how much I've overcome. And that was a beautiful thing to share with her. But we never asked her about that. I want you guys to understand that. It's not that it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. If you want to sort through that stuff and you want healing from that, that's wonderful. But we have to separate the healing from trauma and the being done with your compulsion with eating. They're not the same thing. And as long as those things are connected, it creates this messy monster where you can never really be done with your eating disorder because you haven't truly figured out all of your trauma, and you can't truly figure out all your trauma because you're spending all your time trying to manage your eating disorder. This is an absolute recipe for failure. We must stop telling women of the world that they are broken and have to fix themselves to eat normally. So the women that we help, when they're not spending 70 to 90% of their mental energy on food, then they have their life and themselves and their soul in a place where, like, if they want to sort through this stuff, they can. They don't have to. But they will have so much, and they do have so much more energy to heal themselves when they are not spending their lives trying to heal their food struggles, because they're simply free and done and can move on. And they get all of that life back. So, is it true that we work with many women in, the ones that we help with eating disorders? We help women from all over the world. We're the best in the world at what we do. Yes, we work with a lot of women who have had a background of rape and assault and abuse. And we work with ones who haven't. And this is another thing that we need to bring up today, you guys, is we have so many women who come to us who say, you know what, like, I've really struggled with food. I've been a binge eater. I've been an overeater. I've been bulimic, whatever it is, body hate. And then they'll go and they'll look to an expert and they'll say, okay, well, how do I get done with this thing with food? How do I get free from this food thing? And that expert is going to tell them, and has told them, we hear this all the time from women, oh, well, it must be some sort of trauma in your past. And they're thinking, and they don't have trauma in their past. Oh, well, it must be something. They're thinking, oh, well, I was maybe kind of lonely in 4th grade. Well, maybe that was it. Yeah, but I haven't thought about that. That's not something that affects me. I don't really feel like that's something that should make any difference in my life. If I was lonely in 4th grade, they're like, oh, well, but it's got to be something, right? It's got to be something because you have an eating disorder. So we've just got to keep on digging until we find some sort of trauma. And we have women come to us that just say, you know what? Like, that just did not feel right to me. Like, I know that a lot of people have trauma, but I don't. I had a fine childhood. I've never been hurt that way. Like, life is hard, but I don't see why I have to drum up some sort of trauma for myself because I have an eating disorder. And so then they come to us because they realize, like, oh, wait, this doesn't have anything to do with the trauma. This just has to do with me wanting to fix my relationship with food. And then they fix their relationship with food. But here's the really sad piece about this is that think of the woman who has had something happen to her, right? Has had some horrible thing that maybe she's never told anyone else about, right? And because of her struggle with food, she seeks help. And then she has some expert tell her, oh, well, it's because of your trauma. Oh my gosh, really? Those things are connected? Well, now I have to be forced in my life to rehash all of this stuff so that I can be done with my food struggles. And then she's still not done with her food struggles. And then she has this belief that she's broken. Oh, well, I must not be doing this well enough. I must not be sorting through my trauma well enough. I guess I just have to keep trying that because I must not be doing it well enough because I'm still struggling with food. What if you're still struggling with food because you haven't addressed the food? Because you haven't addressed just the habit that you're in with food. And so we have both women come to us, ones who have been hurt, ones who haven't. And it's cool, like I said, people feel safe in our community to open up about that. And we don't ask them, sometimes they just share and that's fine. And it's also fine if they don't want to share and they have no desire to tell somebody all the details of how someone hurt them. They don't have to do that. They can just be free from food. But we work with so many women who have been sexually assaulted because they are women. And women get sexually assaulted a lot of the time. It's an extremely, extremely common thing. Not because their assault gave them an eating disorder, just because they are women. You take any group of women, take a group of women who are attorneys, take a group of women who are grocery store clerks, take a group of brunettes, take a group of blondes, take a group of women with second toes longer than their big toes. You know what? If you have real conversations with all of them, you're going to find out that a lot of them have been raped and abused because these are groups of women. And this is something that happens to women in society in a very common way. But notice how we're not attaching this to other stuff. We're not saying like, oh, wow, when we look at this group of female attorneys, a lot of them have been raped. I guess rape leads to women wanting to be attorneys. No, it doesn't. It's just a separate thing that is very awful that we really should focus on and fix that has nothing to do with this other thing, which is an eating disorder. You can just directly address the eating disorder and be done with that, and then use your energy for what you want. But until we take the shame out of both eating disorders and the shame out of being a victim, it perpetuates this cycle because it's in this place of shame. Think of how we think of other habits, right? The stigma around eating disorders, oh, she must have an eating disorder because, she's been raped or assaulted or because she has, she doesn't have coping mechanisms or whatever it is, right? So if we applied those things to other habits, think of how we think of the habit of smoking. Oh, wow, they're a smoker. They must have been raped. Oh, wow, they're a smoker. They must have unsorted out trauma in their past. Oh, wow, they're a smoker. They must not have coping mechanisms. No. People get done with smoking all the time because they can just say, hey guys, I'm a smoker. I have this bad habit. I'm trying to quit. And I'm going to get some help to do that. Awesome. Thumbs up. I'm sure you'll be healthier for that. And if we lived in a world where women who have eating disorders can do the same thing, like, hey, I have this compulsive habit with food. I think I'd be healthier without it. I'm getting the help that I need to fix it. And there was no sort of stigma attached to that. So many more women would be open and be able to get the help that they need because they can talk about these things. We can't fix the things that we cannot talk about. We have so many women we talk to where this took so much bravery because we are the first people that they've ever talked to about this. They've been married for 40 years and their husband doesn't know. Their kids don't know. Their best friends don't know. They've spent their whole life keeping this a secret because of all the shame that goes around it. So if you have been raped or assaulted, that is awful. We believe you. We want to support you. We want you to have the help that you need. If you have an eating disorder, you don't have to sort through any trauma before you can be free. You can just do that right now. And the first step is to book a session with our team. We are happy to help you to get this foundation of really being able to be free so you can know exactly what you need to do. And we will direct you on what you need to do to really end this habit all the way. But we've really got to understand what's happening first. This is not something where it's a one size fits all. Oh, here's, a free ebook and follow these steps and you're going to be done. This is something where we really need to understand what's going on with you and food so that we can be able to give you the prescription to be able to be done and to fill in the missing pieces for you in your own life. And that's why we are willing to spend this time with each and every one of you who wants to be free to really help you with that. And so you can book a free session with our team at lifewithlydia.com/apply. Again, you can go to lifewithlydia.com/apply and you can book a free session with our team where we're not going to ask you about your trauma and rehash your past. We're just going to see what's going on with food and how that's impacting you and the missing pieces that you need to be free for the rest of your life. So this is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, signing off. Mwah. Bye, guys.